BBC radio broadcasting legend Steve Wright signed off his last radio show with a tada then before heartbreakingly telling his listeners when he would be back. A much-loved presenter on both Radio 1 and Radio 2 since 1980, Steve, whose death was announced today, was on air on Sunday in a pre-recorded edition of his iconic Love Songs program to mark Valentine's Day. A statement shared to the BBC by his family said, "It is with deep sorrow and profound regret that we announce the passing of our beloved Steve Wright. In addition to his son, Tom, and daughter, Lucy, Steve leaves behind his brother, Lawrence, and his father, Richard. Also, much-loved close friends and colleagues, and millions of devoted radio listeners who had the good fortune and great pleasure of allowing Steve into their daily lives as one of the UK's most enduring and popular radio personalities. As we all grieve, the family requests privacy at this immensely difficult time." During his broadcast on Sunday, Steve was his typical upbeat self in the pre-recorded show that ran for 115 minutes up until 11 a.m. His last song on the track list was Delicate by Terence Trent D'Arby Desiree. As he closed the show, Steve spoke after the penultimate track Raining in My Heart by P. Arnold BBC Concert Orchestra, saying "Goodness that's brilliant" before adding "That's it for today for Love Songs," and a new Love Songs Extra. A Valentine special has just dropped on BBC Sounds for whenever you want it. To check out yesterday's Pick of the Pops, it's also on BBC Sounds. Just punch up Pick of the Pops. The years are 1978, 1986. Michael Ball to follow the news and him back for more love songs next Sunday. Signing off, Steve said, "Tada then." The broadcaster joined BBC Radio 1 in 1980 to host a Saturday evening show before moving on to host Steve Wright in the afternoon a year later until 1993. He then fronted the Radio 1 breakfast show for a year until 1995, and completed a stint at commercial radio stations before returning to BBC Radio 2 in 1996 to host Steve Wright's Saturday show and Sunday Love Songs. In 1999, he recreated Steve Wright in the afternoon every weekday on Radio 2, with celebrity interviews and entertaining trivia featured in his Factoid segment, before stepping down in September 2022. Former BBC Radio 1 host Scott Mills took over the afternoon slot as part of the station's schedule shake-up. Steve continued to present Sunday Love Songs on BBC Radio 2, and since October last year, he presented the long-running show Pick of the Pops, which had previously been fronted by Paul Gambarcini. Head of BBC Radio 2, Helen Thomas, said Steve understood the connection and companionship that radio engenders better than anyone, and we all loved him for it. He was a consummate professional whose attention to detail was always second to none, and he made his guests laugh. He was fair, and he wanted to showcase them and their work in the best possible light, bringing brilliant stories to our listeners, she added. She recalled feeling pure amazement watching him 20 years ago when he became the first presenter she produced. She said, "For all of us at Radio 2, he was a wonderful colleague and a friend with his excellent sense of humor, generosity with his time, and endless wise words. We were lucky to have him with us for all these decades, and we will miss his talent and his friendship terribly."